Senator Menendez is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me just join in saluting Senator Toomey on his service in the Senate on this committee. We haven't always agreed, but I've always known where you stood and your views and the way in which you pursue it. And we've enjoyed our relationship on behalf of our mutual states between Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So we wish you all the best. Director, thank you for joining us. I continue to hear from my constituents about customer service issues with MOHELA, the sole servicer for borrowers pursuing public service loan forgiveness. Complaints range from telephone wait times of up to 4 hours, 6 months, or longer processing delays for PSLF applications and employee certification forms, and the issuing of conflicting, misleading, and inaccurate information about the right to receive refunds for payments made during the COVID-19 payment pause. I can't overstate the negative economic impacts caused by MOHELA's abysmal servicing for public service employees. What is the CFPB doing to ensure that MOHELA provides an acceptable level of customer service to borrowers?
Well, I can't comment on a specific supervisory or other individual matter, but let me just say the complaints that you are seeing, we are seeing them too. Any servicer that is supposed to administer the student loan benefits that are afforded under law and essentially embedded in the contract, they must adhere to that. It's over and over again where we see servicers not living up to their expectations and frankly not living up to the law. We have taken an enforcement action against Ed Financial Services for public service loan forgiveness problems, and we will not hesitate where we find law violations to do so with similar.
Well, I'd urge you to be robust about it because the consequence to consumers
is enormous.
Is enormous. A 2021 report by the Financial Health Network found that nearly 60% of all overdraft fees in 2020 were paid by low and moderate income households, and about 25% were paid by Latino households specifically. According to the CFPB, the banks made $15 billion a year in overdraft and non-sufficient funds. To put that into context, the banks altogether made $71.7 billion in the third quarter of 2022. Do overdraft fees appear to be a major source of revenue for banks?
So they certainly have been. What we are seeing, though, is a shift in the market where they're finally starting to compete. And some banks are drastically reducing them, eliminating them. And a key consumer problem is sometimes a consumer expects one overdraft fee, but they get hit with a ton of bricks and 3 fees, even though when they looked in their balance, they had enough money. We are trying to take action to go after illegal overdraft practices to make sure that these are not an unnecessary financial hardship and that there's compliance with the law.
It seems to me that these institutions would be well successful in terms of their financial wherewithal without these fees, and they particularly affect the most significant in our society who are already at a disadvantage. So I urge your continued engagement on this and appreciate it. I continue to hear story after story from New Jersey constituents who have fallen victim to scams and fraud on Zelle, and in many instances been denied relief by their banks. I understand that the big banks that own Zelle are considering a plan to require the network members to compensate victims of certain kinds of scams. That would be a somewhat relief that would be received. It was reported 5 months ago that the CFPB was working on guidance regarding liability for Zelle scams. Has that work progressed? Where are we at with it?
Well, we have been talking to banks, small banks and big ones, about how to reduce the scourge of fraud in real-time payments. This is not just about Zelle. It's also about other P2P apps. Some small banks who aren't part of the ownership structure of Zelle and others are really wondering how they, too, can make sure that they can investigate what is going on and give answers to their own customers. So we continue to work to make sure that as our country moves to real-time payments, that we do not have more vectors of fraud where people can run. You know, in many cases, these network rules are established by the industry, and I hope that the industry, too, can set up frameworks that actually reduce the total amount of fraud when it comes to P2P apps and bank-owned solutions.
Well, I appreciate that. I know that Senator Reid, myself, Senator Warren, as well as others, have urged the agency to continue to be engaged in this space, and it's incredibly important. And, Mr. Chair, if I have one more minute, I just want to note the bipartisan work we did here in Congress to shepherd the Debt Bondage Repair Act into law. That bill was led by Ranking Member McHenry in the House, Senator Cornyn in the Senate, and certainly I helped make it happen. This helps the survivors of human trafficking have a mechanism to remove negative marks associated with their abuse from credit reports. In June, you issued a final rule to implement the legislation, and I want to thank you for the hard work that it took to get that done. I think we should all be reminded of the scourge of human trafficking, and in this case, how we can provide some relief to the victims of it.
I also want to just add, I have similar concerns about impacts on victims of domestic violence and how credit reporting can be used as a weapon. We're trying to think about all the ways in which all of your work on human trafficking, other credit reporting work as well. And by the way, Senator Menendez, this is another example, one of the many times that Congress has passed a law and the CFPB has faithfully implemented it. Every time Congress acts in statute, the CFPB responds and is accountable for it.
One of the many reasons we need a CFPB. Thank you very much.